Man City close in on Grealish chase, PSG edge closer to Donnarumma, Ancelotti's midfield request, Foden named the most valuable footballer, and a transfer roundup all coming up on today's OneFootball Daily News. As I'm your host Angelina Kelly, let's get into it. First up, and according to reports, it looks like Manchester City are focusing even more on signing Jack Grealish, and this apparently has got something to do with Emi Buendia. So of course he made the move to Villa yesterday for about £30 million from Norwich, and what this has led a few people to believe is that perhaps this will make it easier for them to prize Grealish away from Aston Villa. Not too sure about that one, but definitely can understand why City are so focused on the player. According to ESPN, Pep Guardiola deems Grealish a vital player alongside a striker like Harry Kane, and although Manchester United have reportedly also been interested in Grealish, Manchester City, according to sources, state that they are more than confident that they can win the race for the 25-year-old. Grealish is of course signed to a 5-year deal at Villa Park, and despite Manchester City already having a wealth of attacking options, the likes of Riyad Mahrez, Phil Foden, Raheem Sterling to name a few, apparently Guardiola sees Grealish as the perfect player that can take them to that next level, especially when it comes to competing in the Champions League. Now, whilst Grealish doesn't have any Champions League experience, it's more what he's going to bring on the pitch. Like I say, Grealish is 25 years of age. He's heading into the peak of his career now, and you couldn't blame him for wanting to perhaps make a move to a club like Manchester City that are going to be competing for those big trophies. He's given so much to Villa and the fans, so yeah, I can definitely understand why he would want to make the move, and especially when you consider him partnering up with Phil Foden, it would be absolutely incredible. They're both still quite young, so what this means is that they could be one of the fiercest attacking duos in the Premier League for the next 5 years potentially. You team this also with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, potentially Harry Kane up front if they manage to get him, and Manchester City would look extremely dangerous going forward. Guardiola has always liked to build a team on attacking strengths, and with their defence pretty much solid now, you can understand why they are in the market for a player like Grealish. Of course, there is the price tag of about £100 million. Manchester City are not normally the type of club that would spend that much money, especially when you compare them to other big teams in Europe. However, if there was a player worth that price tag, it would definitely be Jack Grealish. Next up, and according to reports, it seems like the move of Gianluigi Donnarumma to PSG is pretty much done and dusted. According to reports in Italy, the deal could actually be done as soon as today. So the deal itself is a 5-year contract of €12 million a year. And you can understand why PSG are offering this to the 22-year-old. I mean, he has really risen through the ranks with AC Milan. He's become a household name. He's the type of player that you are always discussing when you're talking about some of the world's best goalkeepers. And like I say, he is still so young at the age of 22. However, apparently, according to other reports from other journalists in France, not everybody at PSG is happy about this deal. So reports do state that PSG's president and sporting director Leonardo are the two that have really pushed for this deal, especially with Leonardo reportedly being good friends with Mino Raiola. But according to journalist Romain Molina, not everybody is happy, including Mauricio Pochettino, the technical staff, and quite a few players, as they believe that their goalkeeping situation is something that doesn't really need to be altered. Of course, PSG already have Keylor Navas as their goalkeeper, and apparently the bond between him as number 1 and Sergio Rico, who is their number 2 goalkeeper, is very, very strong. Navas is a very, very big personality in the dressing room, and people are worried about if this will affect him with Donnarumma arriving at the club. PSG also have 3 goalkeepers coming back from loan this season, one of them being Alphonse Areola, whose agent is also Mino Raiola. So I think that this will probably mark the end of his time at PSG if Donnarumma does make the move. This is going to be a really interesting one, as I cannot see Navas wanting to sit on the bench, and I definitely cannot see Donnarumma wanting to sit on the bench either. Navas is 34 years of age. Potentially they're looking at Donnarumma as the future of the club, but Navas has just signed a contract extension until 2024. Rico also has a contract until 2024. So all this means is that the battle for PSG's number 1 goalkeeper is going to be very interesting indeed. Next up, and heading to Real Madrid, and with Carlo Ancelotti back at the helm at the Bernabeu, he apparently, according to Mundo Deportivo, has already put in his first request for a player, and it's Manuel Locatelli. So the 23-year-old has had an amazing season with Sassuolo. He has arguably been one of the brightest stars in Serie A this season. Apparently Manchester City and Juventus also have their eyes on the player, but Ancelotti has reportedly stated that this is the man he wants to sign. Now, of course, if he does want to sign him, you can understand it. He would be great in the midfield, especially when you consider how young he is and the fact that Real Madrid's normal midfield is about 29 years of age and over. So they could definitely do with a refresh. However, if Ancelotti does manage to beat the likes of City and Juve to get this player, he's first going to have to lighten the squad because there are so many other players in this area of the pitch. According to market specialist Transfer Market, Real Madrid have 10 players that have been out on loan that equate to the value of over 170 million euros. And like I say, this is something that Ancelotti is going to have to sort out, because 4 of these players out of the 10 are already midfielders. Of course, you've got Martin Odegaard, didn't really get much game time under Zidane. Perhaps with Ancelotti being back at the helm, this will mean that he will get some game time. We'll have to wait and see, as the club reportedly do deem him as a player they do not want to sell. Then there's Dani Ceballos, who could be influenced with Ancelotti's arrival, but according to reports in Spain with AS, this is a player that the club could see themselves selling. Then there's Reinier, who had a really disappointing spell with Dortmund this season, so he could definitely be a player that we see leaving. Then there is Kubo. He had a great season with Mallorca. He was deemed the next best thing at Real Madrid. He's had 2 really unsuccessful loans with Villarreal and Getafe, so apparently they're going to wait and see what happens with the Tokyo Olympics and see if he can perhaps recapture some of the form that we once did see at Mallorca. And on top of these 4 midfielders, there is also the likes of Brahim Diaz, who had a great season with AC Milan, Gareth Bale, who has a massive question mark over his future. There's Luka Jovic, Borja Mayoral, who had a great season with Roma, Fran Garcia and Jesus Vallejo. So what this means is that Ancelotti definitely has his work cut out, and if he does manage to offload a couple of players, perhaps we could actually be seeing some new faces in Real Madrid's midfield. Our next story takes us to the most valuable players in European football. So the group CIES Football Observatory, they have taken numerous things into account, including inflation, a player's age, the club that they're at, etc. And all of these things come together to decide who is the most valuable player in Europe. And this year, it is Phil Foden. He has been priced at 190.2 million euros. Absolutely massive. I mean, he has had an amazing season with Manchester City. Of course, he had some great performances in the Premier League that got him the PFA Young Player of the Year award. Of course, he was also vital in their Champions League campaign and getting them to that final, so you can understand why he is definitely at the top of this list. So after Foden on the list, surprisingly in my opinion, was Manchester United's Mason Greenwood and Marcus Rashford, with their teammate Bruno Fernandes coming in 5th. Like I say, kind of surprised at this one, as although they've all had amazing seasons, I didn't expect them to be so high up on the list. Now, of course, I'm sure you're all asking, where's Erling Haaland? Where's Kylian Mbappe? Well, Mbappe didn't actually come into the top 10, but Erling Haaland did. He came in at 4th, and you can definitely see why. He is the most valuable non-Premier League player at 155.5 million euros. And to be honest, I really thought he would be higher up the list, especially when you think of the fact that the Observatory do take into account recent performances and all of those goals that he scored. Very surprising that he only came in at 4th. Other names that came into the list was Barcelona duo Frenkie de Jong and Pedri, Atletico Madrid's João Felix, Bayern Munich's defender Alphonso Davies, and finishing the list at number 10 was Chelsea's Mason Mount, another amazing player that had a great season for his club. Of course, you could argue where players have placed in the list. Perhaps some people should have been higher or lower, especially when you think of the fact that recent performances have been taken into account and maybe some players have performed better or worse in your opinions. You just cannot believe the amount of money that is being talked about in this top 10 and the fact that this is probably only going to increase. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments who would have made it into your top 10. And finally, we have our transfer roundup. This is where I take a look at some of the other news and transfers going on in the footballing world. And first up, according to reports, Chelsea have made contact with Erling Haaland about a potential £170 million deal over in Atalanta, and they have set a price tag for Christian Romero of £52 million, as he is reportedly being linked with a move to Manchester United. With a move to Barcelona seemingly off the table for Jorginho Wijnaldum, the Catalan club are reportedly looking at Lorenzo Pellegrini from Roma as an alternative. And speaking of Roma, they are allegedly interested in Wolves goalkeeper Rui Patricio, and apparently the club have set a price tag of €12 million. That's all for today's OneFootball Daily News. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all later.